Ah, Mr. Holmes, I was hoping I'd find you here working in the library.
My dear Tebbit, I know you are a tutor and lecturer at this college, but you must understand I am an extremely busy man.
I realize that, but a very awkward and delicate incident has occurred here at Magdalen. By chance, you are here, and I must turn to you for help.
I'm sorry I cannot be disturbed. If there is any trouble, I should prefer it if you would call in the police.
The police? Oh, no. No, that would cause a terrible scandal at all costs. Magdalen must avoid a scandal. I beg of you, Mr. Holmes, help us. For the sake of the college, help us, please.
We present the stories of Sherlock Holmes. Tonight,
a hollow victory.
It was in the year 1892 that Sherlock Holmes and I spent some weeks at one of the great university towns. We were residing at the time in furnished lodgings close to a library, where Holmes was engaged upon researches into early English charters. It was whilst he was busy with his research that Frank Tebbit, one of the lecturers at Magdalen College, burst in upon him. A gaunt man of excitable character, he was even more agitated than usual.
I must explain, Mr. Holmes, that tomorrow is the first day of the examination for the Hamilton Scholarship. I am one of the examiners. Today, at about 3 o'clock, the proofs of the examination paper arrived from the printers. I read it carefully, as the text must be quite correct, a large part of it being passages in Greek to be translated. There must be no printer's errors, you see.
Quite so.
At 4:30 p.m., I left as I had an appointment to take tea in a friend's room. I left the proofs on my desk. I was away for little more than an hour. As you know, our college doors are double, the green baize one within and the heavy oak without. As I approached my outer door, I was amazed to find a key in the lock. But it was not my key. I knew I'd not been so careless. My key was still in my pocket.
Nevertheless, there must have been a duplicate. Who carries it?
Oh, my servant, Jackson, who's been with me for 10 years. His honesty is above suspicion.
Have you questioned him?
Yes. I met him in the corridor and discovered that the key was indeed his. He had come to my room to ask if I wanted to take tea, and he had very carelessly left his key in the door when he had left a few minutes later. Of course, in ordinary circumstances, it would not have mattered.
And what are the examination papers on your desk?
Oh, the moment I looked at the table, I knew that someone had been in there. The proofs were in 3 long slips. I'd left them all together. Now I found one on the table, one on a side table near the window, and the third upon the floor.
Tell me, Tebbit, is the scholarship a valuable one?
Very. There is a lot to be gained by getting it, including money.
Jackson entered the room with you. What was his reaction to all of this?
He nearly collapsed. I had to seat him in a chair and give him brandy. He was so upset to realize he'd been the cause of such an outrage.
Did you examine the room?
Yes. While Jackson was recovering, I tried to be thorough. I found evidence of a broken pencil, the tip of some lead near the paper on the table.
Ah, excellent. Continue.
Then a definite cut, about 3 inches long, in the red leather surface of my new writing desk. Both Jackson and I are sure it wasn't there before.
Ah.
Oh, that is not all. I found a small ball of clay with specks of sawdust on it. I'm convinced that these are clues left by the man who entered my room.
Very interesting. Yes, well, of course, I see your dilemma. If the culprit is not found, then the examination will have to be postponed until fresh papers are prepared. That would call for an explanation and could create a scandal that would naturally reflect upon you, the college, and indeed the whole university.
That is it exactly, Mr. Holmes. Please help me to settle this matter quietly and discreetly.
Very well, I will look into it.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Now, before you go to your rooms, just a few questions.
Yes?
Have you had any visitors in your rooms since the papers arrived?
Only one, I think. Raoul Chavra, a foreign student. He lives in the block. He came to ask certain questions regarding the examination.
Is he one of the entrants, then?
Yes.
And the papers were on your table while he was present?
If I remember correctly, they were rolled up.
No, nevertheless, he might have recognized them as printer's proofs.
Possible, though unlikely. No one knew they were there, not even Jackson.
Where is Jackson now?
I left him recovering in the chair in my room. I hurried straight to you.
Well, then it amounts to this. Either this student, Shabra, recognized the papers and is the guilty party, or whoever tampered with them came upon them by accident.
So it seems to me.
Yes, well, we better go over there. Would you care to come along, Watson?
I'd remained silent throughout this interview. I was useful to Holmes when there were medical matters that needed attention, but this was purely academic. However, not wanting to appear uninterested, I agreed to walk over to Mortland with them. It was nearly dusk when we reached Tebbett's rooms. He was on the ground floor, and above him, he explained, lived 3 students. Holmes stopped and, standing on tiptoe, peered in through Tebbett's window.
Oh, no use considering this as a method of entry, Mr. Holmes. There's no opening in the window except that one pane high up.
Well, if there's nothing to be learned out here, we might as well go inside.
This way.
We entered the building, Tebbett leading the way. Tebbett let himself in with his own key and bade us welcome. Holmes set to work making a thorough investigation of the carpet.
Nothing here. The day's too dry for footmarks. Jackson has recovered, I see. Which chair did you leave him in?
There, by the window.
I see, near this small table. Yes, I imagine what happened is that the man entered through the door, took the papers to the window so that he could see you if you crossed the courtyard, so you could make a quick escape.
As a matter of fact, that would not have helped him. I returned by the side door.
Ah, that's interesting. Well, that's what he must have had in his mind anyway. Now, let's see the printer's 3 pages.
Here you are.
So there's no fingerprints that are visible anyway. So many people could have handled these. How long would it take to copy one of these using every possible method of contraction?
Oh, allowing for careful study and taking pertinent notes, I should say a quarter of an hour.
Then placing it on the table, he studied the next paper. He was still doing this when you returned unexpectedly. Yes, he could not have seen you cross the courtyard, but something disturbed him. You've not time to replace the papers. Yes, this is the lead of the pencil.
Yes, I have not touched anything, I assure you.
Good. Yes, an unusual type of lead. Not often used in ordinary pencils. Valuable. This is the small black pellet. Yes, I need to study this through my lens. Yes. Yes, and here is the cut in the red leather top. Yes, it's quite a tear. Well, this gets more and more fascinating. Where does that door lead to?
To my bedroom.
Have you been in there since discovering all of this?
No, I came straight to you. Take a look if you wish. Allow me.
Thank you. What a charming room. I don't wish to pry, but I presume this large wardrobe is where you keep most of your clothes. May I? Yes. Large and convenient. And there seems to be... now what have we here on the floor next to the shoe rack? It's a similar piece of clay, formed into a pyramid shape, identical to the one by your table. Now, isn't that extraordinary?
Yes, let me see that. Yes. Yes, you're right. What does it mean, Mr. Holmes?
I don't know. It seemed that your visitor had access to your bedroom as well as to the sitting room, Mr. Tebbett.
That does not make sense. Surely anyone wanting to take notes from my papers would be familiar with the layout of these rooms. Whoever it was could not have fled into the bedroom by mistake.
Then he must have done so intentionally, in order to hide.
Do you mean that he might have been hiding in here when Jackson and I came back?
Very likely. In which case, you had only to close this door, and you have had him a prisoner. But first things first. It's necessary, I think, that I meet your servant, Jackson. Can that be arranged?
Excuse me, sir.
No, Jackson. Just the man we wish to see.
I came back to see if there had been any new developments, sir.
No, but this is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, who are investigating. Please answer any questions as clearly as you can.
Of course, sir.
I understand all this happened because you left your key in the outside door. How extraordinary that you should do so on this one important occasion.
It's something I can't explain. I missed the key and realized what I must have done. I had a tea tray in my hand at the time, you see. I couldn't believe my carelessness. I hurried back, but met Mr. Tebbit in the corridor, and when we entered together, I saw the worst had happened, and someone had been in the rooms. I tried to be helpful, but the shock was too much. I felt ill, near to fainting.
Where were you when you started to feel ill?
By the door.
Yet you collapsed in this chair by the window. Odd.
I don't think Jackson knew what he was doing. We were both shocked. It was minutes before either of us could think straight.
Yes, well, that will be all for the moment, Jackson.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Tebbit. Ring if you need me again, won't you, sir? I'm most dreadfully sorry.
I'd like the names of the 3 students you say live about these rooms. Who are they?
One of them is the foreign student I told you about, Raoul Chabra. He is quiet, keeps himself to himself. His work is good, although I would say his Greek is his weakest subject. Then there is Forbes, a fine scholar and athlete. Well, perhaps too keen on sport, but a fine young man. His father was the notorious Sir Stafford Forbes, who ruined himself gambling. The son is poor, but should do well.
I see. And the third?
Harland McBride. Brilliant. One of the brightest intellects of the college. But wayward and unprincipled. I know what your next question will be. Which of the 3 do I suspect? Oh, I can't answer that.
I'm glad, because I wasn't going to ask you anyway. But I was about to suggest a quick stroll outside in the courtyard before it becomes too dark. Shall we go?
Holmes led us out of Tebbett's rooms and back to the courtyard. It was not quite dark. 3 yellow squares of light shone above us. The 3 students were spending the night before the exams in their rooms. Shadows moved across the blinds of one room. Is Raoul Chabra pacing the floor. An occasional movement came from Forbes's quarters. From the 3rd window, there was a bright light, but no sign of activity. Holmes suggested that we make some excuse and call on each in turn. Tebbit thought it could be arranged and led us up the ancient staircase. At Raoul Chabra's rooms, we were welcomed a trifle coldly.
Please to come in, Mr. Tibbet. Sorry to interrupt, but these are friends of mine who are looking over the college. This is Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson.
How do you do? How do you do?
I am pleased to meet any friends of my tutor.
Oh, thank you. I'm interested in the internal design of these buildings. They're very well appointed, are they not?
I find it very comfortable here. Please to look around. Well, I am pleased to see that you're not doing any last-minute studying, Chabra. That shows confidence. I do not feel confident. I am greatly worried. I am very nervous. I'm lost to know how to spend this last night before the examination.
Ah, you have an examination tomorrow. I'm so sorry. We did not know. Shall we move on, Tebbit? Good luck tomorrow. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
I noticed that Holmes' eyes had been darting about all over the room, especially at the large desk by the window. Raoul Chabra seemed a mystery. Courteous and well-dressed, he could have been thinking anything as he bowed us from his rooms. We went up another floor, and this time called upon Julian Forbes.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
Come in. Make yourselves at home. I'm afraid I have nothing to offer you in the way of a drink.
Oh, that's quite all right. We're just making a brief tour of the college. If we accepted everyone's hospitality, we'd be here all night. However, it is very pleasant to meet you. I understand you have an important examination tomorrow. And may I wish you the very best of luck.
Oh, thank you. I hope I will do well. I have worked hard for it.
Oh, I'm glad to see you're so relaxed, Julian. Get an early night and do well.
Oh, I shall try it. Thank you for your good wishes. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Again, I was aware of the intense scrutiny Holmes had given the room and its occupant. We followed Tebbit up further stairs to the rooms of the 3rd student. This time, our reception was far from cordial.
Who is it?
Your tutor, Tebbit.
Go away.
I beg your pardon. I have friends here who wish to meet you.
Well, I don't want to meet them. Tomorrow is the exam and I have swatting to do. I won't be disturbed by anyone. Is that clear? Go away.
I rather think we're not wanted, Tebbit.
I really must apologize.
Not at all. He has the right to sport his oak on an occasion such as this. I only want to know one thing about Harlan McBride.
And what is that?
How tall is he?
I beg your pardon?
Is he under 6 feet? Is he taller than I am?
No, not at all. Much shorter. Well built, but shorter.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. And now, Mr. Tebbit, I wish you good night.
But, Mr. Holmes, Surely you're not going to leave me in this abrupt fashion. I must have some definite action. I cannot allow the examination to proceed tomorrow if one of the papers has been tampered with.
You must leave it as it is. I shall drop round early tomorrow morning. I shall tell you my views then. Meanwhile, leave everything as it is, understand? Do not change a thing.
Holmes remained quiet as we made our way back to our lodgings. He said good night shortly after dinner and did no more work on his studies. At 8 in the morning, he came to my room and was quite his old self again, quite changed from the preoccupied person of the night before.
Oh, good morning, Watson. Lovely morning. Come, this time we went to see Mr. Tebbit. Can you do without breakfast?
Certainly.
Tebbit will be in a terrible state until we tell him something positive.
But have you anything positive to tell him?
Oh, yes, my dear Watson, I've solved the case.
What? Well, how could you have done? What possible fresh evidence could you have got since last night?
This. It's not for nothing that I got up at 5:30 this morning. I put in 2 solid hours of work and covered over 5 miles, and I have something to show for it. There it is.
3 small pieces of black clay, almost identical. But Holmes, yesterday, there were only 2.
Quite. Now, this one I discovered this morning, and the 3 of them will solve the whole mystery. Come, Watson, let's go and put Tebbit out of his misery, shall we?
The unfortunate tutor was certainly in a state of great agitation. In a few hours, the examinations would commence. He appealed to Holmes immediately.
Thank heavens you've come, Mr. Holmes. What am I to do? Shall the examination proceed?
Oh, yes, let it proceed by all means.
But the culprit...
He will not sit the examination.
How can you say that? Does it mean that you know who it is?
I think so. And if this matter is not to become public, then we must pass judgment upon this ourselves. And so, in this private court-martial, so to speak, we shall take up official positions. Watson, will you stand there?
Oh, very well.
There. And ring the bell, please.
That will bring Jackson.
Exactly.
Very well.
I say, Holmes, can't you tell us a little more? I mean, what do we have to do?
Just you stand there and glare, Watson. Fiddle with your moustache and frighten the life out of anyone who comes through that door. Here is the first person. Come in, Jackson.
You do as Mr. Holmes requests, Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Now, Tebbit, would you leave us for a little while? Please go down and bring Mr. Forbes down to us.
But I don't understand. I mean, what...
do as I say, please.
Very well, but I must confess that I do not understand this. It is lamentable, lamentable.
Now, Jackson, would you please tell us the truth about yesterday's incident?
I have told you everything, sir.
You have nothing to add?
No, sir.
Then I will make a suggestion. When you came in here yesterday, and you appeared to be considerably shocked, you sat down upon that chair. The reason was to conceal something, was it not?
No, of course not.
I think you answered that a little too quickly. I wonder why. You know who was in this room yesterday, don't you, Jackson?
No, sir, no.
It is a pity you feel that you have to lie. Stay with us, but stand over there by the bedroom door and wait. Yes, I think the time has come.
Oh, it is lucky that I found you. I think you must have been coming to see me.
Yes, I was. It was very important, you see, sir.
Come in. Close the door. Yes. Now, Mr. Forbes, we are alone here. We can be perfectly frank with each other. We want to know why an honorable man such as yourself ever stooped to become the cheat you were yesterday.
What? Jackson, how could... Oh, it wasn't me, sir. Mr. Forbes, I never said a word.
But you have now. Forbes, your only chance lies in a frank confession.
I don't know where to begin. How can I tell anyone?
Then let me tell the story, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, Tebbit told me that no one, not even Jackson, knew the papers were in this room. It was extremely unlikely that Raoul Chabra could tell what the papers even looked like when he came in here. After all, they were rolled up. The chances of someone coming in here by accident and finding them would be too remote. Obviously, someone saw into the room from outside.
I see.
Forbes had been training that afternoon. He had his running shoes with him, the traditional kind, spikes on the soles. When he passed the window, he saw that you had been working on the exam paper. As he passed the door on the way to his room, he noticed that the key was in the lock. The temptation was too much. He let himself in and saw the situation at a glance. He placed his running shoes on the table and placed something, gloves perhaps, on the chair whilst he hurriedly made notes. Correct, Forbes?
Yes.
Thinking you, Tebbit, would return across the courtyard, he stayed by the window to watch. But you didn't. You came by the side entrance and he was caught. There was no escape. He grabbed for his shoes and made a tear in the red leather. Darting across to the bedroom, he forgot his gloves on the chair. Some of the black clay from around the spikes of his running shoes dropped off. One piece was left here, another in the bedroom cupboard where he hid himself. That third piece I collected from the pitch where he trained yesterday. Correct so far, Forbes?
Yes, it's exact as you've explained.
Is that all you can say for yourself after such infamous conduct?
I'm sorry. And to prove it, I have here a letter which I wrote last night. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't live with what I'd done. In the letter, I say I'm withdrawing from the examination. I'm ashamed.
Well, I am relieved to know you have recovered your self-respect. Why the change of heart, Forbes?
Jackson. He persuaded me.
Well, Jackson, can you clear up the last point in this mystery for me? What was your interest in all of this?
It's simple enough, Mr. Holmes. I was at one time butler to Sir Stafford Forbes, this young man's father. When he was ruined, I came here to work for Mr. Tebbit. I never forgot my old employer and made it my job to watch over his son. That's why I pretended to collapse when I sat in the chair in order to conceal the gloves. When Mr. Tebbit left to seek your help, I aided Mr. Forbes to escape. What else could I do? My loyalties. I didn't approve, of course, and I persuaded him to do the right thing. I'm sorry, but, well, can you blame me, Mr. Holmes?
There was silence in those rooms at Magdalen College. Forbes looked down at the floor. Tebbit stared out of the window, and Jackson slowly left the room. Holmes said,
Well, Watson, I think that clears up the matter. Breakfast awaits us. Goodbye, Forbes. You have fallen low. In the future, see how high you can rise.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Might I inquire your movements today, Watson?
Oh, only my usual rounds in the Paddington area, Holmes. And now back here for lunch at the usual time. Surgery late this afternoon and some paperwork in the evening. Nothing very special. Why?
I've had a note brought round. It's extremely interesting. It reads, Sir Charles Drewings will be pleased if you would receive him at your rooms in Baker Street at 2:30 this afternoon. It is a matter of national importance and extremely urgent. Yes, it comes, as you can see, from the seal on the envelope from the Admiralty.
Well, I think I understand. The matter will be secret and your meeting highly confidential. You'd like me to lunch in town and come back later?
No, not at all. I believe Sir Charles Drewings is a very shrewd and devious character. I should very much like a witness to this meeting. You will be here to assist me.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
Lack of evidence.
Die goeie ou dae van Springbok Radio is terug. 20 onverkrygbare liedjies nou op 1 CD. Met al jou gunstelinge. Virginia Lee, Cora Marie, Anton Goosen, Sonja Herold, Cupido en vele meer. Herleef Springbok Radio, Afrikaanse treffers.
Flower Connection has just opened their flagship store in Linden, Johannesburg, at 65 on 4th, situated in 4th Avenue. For fresh cut flowers, plants and florist accessories at wholesale prices, come to Flower Connection. Call Jenny on 076 951 9449 or visit our website at www.flowerconnection.com.
Sherlock Holmes was accustomed to dealing with government departments, but any assistance he was asked to give invariably came through the visits from his brother Mycroft. It was unusual to have a direct request from someone as high up as Sir Charles Drewings. I went about my business and forgot all about the appointment. There were several difficult cases that needed hospitalization, and to my consternation, I found the morning had slipped away. Lunchtime had come and gone. And when eventually I got back to Baker Street, it was nearly 2:30. A carriage waited at the curb outside 221B. I let myself in and found Holmes seated in his favorite chair. Opposite him was a tall, distinguished-looking man of rather forbidding appearance. Holmes immediately made the necessary introductions.
How do you do, Dr. Watson?
How do you do?
I am pleased to meet you. But surely, Holmes, you must have understood that I intended this appointment to be strictly confidential.
Watson has been privy to almost every case I've ever handled, including the most secret assignments from my brother Mycroft.
Unfortunately, Mycroft is not in England at the moment. Were he so, I should doubtless have used him as an intermediary.
He would have welcomed Watson's assistance, I do assure you. You need have no fear of speaking freely in front of a most trusted colleague.
Well, very well. The fact is that I have an assistant at the Admiralty. His name is Robert Rivers. He lives quite near here in Upper Montague Street, or rather, he did. The fact is that Rivers has simply disappeared, can't be traced at all. He should have been in the office 2 days ago. He didn't turn up. No sign of him anywhere. We're very worried.
You think he may have met with an accident? Surely he has a family who would have known that.
Well, he has a wife. A very beautiful wife, years younger than himself. They appear to be estranged. A delicate matter. Impending divorce, I understand. Naturally, Rivers wishes to avoid that publicity, but that's not what disturbs me, Mr. Holmes. The fact is that for some time now we've been aware that certain information has been passing from our office to foreign shores. As you know, we in Britain pride ourselves on our secret service, best in the world. Information coming back to us leads us to believe that someone in the Admiralty has, well, to put it bluntly, turned traitor.
I see. And you suspect it's Robert Rivers?
It's a grave accusation, Holmes. I don't care to put it in as many words, but the possibility does exist. Recently I've been watching Rivers. Only he and I have the keys to the safe where the codes are kept. It's top secret. The codes are continually changing. Now, I know that Rivers has been at work on certain papers. I'm reasonably sure that he has contacts in Austria. Your brother Mycroft is over there at the moment and confirms that information is being leaked out.
So you think Rivers became aware that you were onto him and that he has skipped the country with your latest plans?
That is what I fear.
I see. Well, if he's been missing for 2 days, he could easily be aboard ship or even across the channel. What does his wife say?
We have not contacted her. She's rarely at his house. The point is, Holmes, I don't want to call in the yard. If this can be handled quietly, if you can obtain proof that Rivers has defected, then our men on the continent will know what to do. At the moment, there is simply not enough evidence. Will you consider taking up this investigation and giving it top priority? Please agree for England's sake.
Of course, I knew Holmes would say yes, and he lost no time in taking action. The moment Charles left us, Holmes reached for one of his files. He speedily confirmed the background and address of Robert Rivers, and, giving me time for a light luncheon, suggested a short walk round to the Rivers home in Upper Montague Street. In response to our ringing, the door was opened by an extremely lovely lady, and she was quite obviously the wife we'd been told about.
Yes, can I help you?
I beg your pardon, madame, but am I addressing the wife of Robert Rivers?
I am Irene Rivers, yes.
I am Sherlock Holmes, and this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson.
Oh, Mr. Holmes. Well, of course, I have heard of you. Would you care to step inside before stating your business?
You are very kind. Thank you.
Please come this way. I presume that a visit from someone as illustrious as yourself must mean that you wish to ask questions about Robert. Please, won't you both be seated?
Thank you. What makes you assume it's in connection with your husband, Mrs. Rivers?
Because he's the only one who matters here. If it is about Robert, then I must tell you that I know nothing. I haven't seen him in months. I'm only here for a few days to collect some possessions, and then I'm about to sail for the United States.
I see. If you see so little of your husband, then presumably you know nothing of his movements.
Nothing at all. Even when I stayed here permanently and tried to help him, he was totally secretive about where he was going and why.
You have no idea where he is at the moment?
Well, at his office, presumably.
He's not been seen for over 2 days. No one knows where he is. The Admiralty are extremely worried. They fear that he may have met with some misfortune.
Not been seen? Oh, but surely I've only just returned here, you understand. I've not even seen the servants. Surely they must know.
Well, I believe they have been questioned and can throw no light on the matter.
I see. Oh, I wish I could help. I really do. Oh, dear. I hope this isn't going to complicate matters. You see, Mr. Holmes, I am leaving my husband, this time for good. I'm seeking a divorce and leaving for America, where I hope to marry the man I'm in love with. I don't wish to part from Robert as bad friends.
When are you thinking of leaving?
Well, I have a passage booked on the Ruritania for the day after tomorrow.
I see. Well, then let us hope we have good news for you before then.
Oh, Irene, darling, did you know that... Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't know that you had visitors.
That's quite all right. The gentlemen were about to leave. Let me introduce you. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson. This is Mr. Douglas Beresford from New York.
A great pleasure to meet you, Mr. Holmes. Your name is well known, even on the other side of the Atlantic.
Oh, that is most gratifying.
Mr. Holmes is here making inquiries about my husband, Douglas. I have told him that having just returned to the house after an absence of some weeks, I know nothing of his whereabouts.
I see. Well, I'm sorry. I can't help you either, Mr. Holmes. Rivers and I hardly know each other.
Well, then it's useless to question you further. May I have a few words with the servants before we leave, Mrs. Rivers?
Yes, of course. Be so good as to ring the bell, please, Douglas.
Yes, sure.
May I leave you my card? You will, of course, get in touch with me if you hear from your husband or can throw any light upon his sudden disappearance.
Yes, of course.
You rang, madame?
Yes, Briggs. Please take these two gentlemen down to the servants' quarters and allow them to question whoever is available, and then be so good as to show them to a carriage.
Very good, ma'am. If you would follow me, gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, good day to you, Mrs. Rivers. Mr. Beresford.
Good day.
Good day.
Irene, darling, what do they really want? What did you tell them?
I told them nothing, except that I'm in love, and I'm going to America to divorce and remarry. That's all, my dear. That's all.
Really? Oh, my dear.
The christening of the servants at Upper Montague Street took very little time. But, to my surprise, Holmes asked to be shown out the back way into Montague Mews. He then entered the private coach house.
Yes, I see. The horse and carriage are not here. All seems in order. The hay untouched, unused. It rained yesterday, but there's no evidence of it in here, except... but wait. What is this over here? Look. Blood.
You're right, Holmes. Blood, and quite a lot of it. Dried blood. It's not fresh.
Yes, and here there's been quite a violent struggle. The hay, canvas coverings, all buried away. Give me a hand, Watson. Look. A man. A dead man.
Heavens, Holmes. What a sight. This man's been beaten to death.
Yes, it looks as though he's put up a good fight. His hands are much bruised. And then perhaps when he was down, he was struck violently from the back with a heavy instrument. Look, a coachman's wheel hammer. Shot at the base of his skull. Oh, it's murder, all right, Watson.
Holmes, is this Robert Rivers, the missing man?
No, I think not, Watson. He's a servant. I should judge from his garb that he's a family coachman. The poor fellow's dead, all right. Well, that means we shall have to bring the police into this case. Can you please use the telephone, Watson? I saw one on the wall inside the hall.
Yes, of course.
Get through to Inspector Lestrade at Scotland Yard. Tell him to come to me or send a man round.
Right.
Meanwhile, I have the opportunity of going over this table before no one else gets here. Now, hurry, Watson, hurry.
Looking for space to hang and dry your washing? Washline distributors have the solution. Their rotating and fold-down wash lines take up the smallest spaces. Ideal for townhouses, simplexes and balconies at affordable prices. Galvanized or powder-coated and available in 5 different colours. For 24-hour delivery, installation, reliable and friendly service, phone Washline Distributors on 011 792 2486. That's 011 792 2486. Wash lines for every space and need.
Enjoy the best of both worlds. Only 2 hours drive from Johannesburg and Pretoria and half an hour by air. The magnificent Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park, just 10 kilometers from the Pilanesberg Game Reserve and Sun City Resort. It offers an exciting escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Reasonable rates, excellent food, friendly service and comfortable air-conditioned rooms. It will ensure a memorable stay. Activities include tennis, squash, horse riding, the Lion Park, and much, much more. Call now to make a reservation on 014-573-1000. That's 014-573-1000. Or visit their website at www.restinations.co.za/Sundown Ranch. The Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park. 2 worlds in one.
In less than an hour, Inspector Lestrade had arrived with a police sergeant. Holmes had got the butler to identify the body. It was indeed the coachman Morgan, who had been in service to Robert Rivers for so many years. Lestrade made his own examination and agreed with Holmes.
Struck down from behind. Murder, all right.
Yes, I hope you don't think this is too small a matter for you, Lestrade.
This is the home of Robert Rivers, isn't it? He works at the Admiralty. A murder on the premises of anyone employed at such places has serious undercurrents. I see that the horse and carriage are not here. Is it possible that Mr. Rivers has taken them?
Yes, it is possible, but I think you do well to concentrate on this as a straightforward murder, Lestrade.
Oh, well, where do we start? Any ideas?
Oh, yes, plenty. You're looking for a man of approximately 5 foot 8 inches tall. He has red hair, and he has a tooth missing from the front of his mouth.
Holmes, you aren't serious.
I'm never more so. The coachman Morgan put up a good fight. I see the knuckles of his hands and the bruises on his face. He landed several blows to the head of his assailant. Adhered to the blood on his hands were various hairs. I've used tweezers to place them in this envelope. Yes, the hairs, as you will see, are of a rather vivid red.
Yes. Yes, all right, Holmes. Carry on.
You'll find there's also a broken tooth in that envelope. I picked it up from the straw. It must have been from the man Morgan was fighting, because Morgan's teeth are all quite intact. Also on the beam of the stable there are similar red hairs. That shows that the man was hit and staggered back. His head hit the post at roughly 5.5 feet from the ground. It is reasonable, therefore, to assume that he is a small man. He must have red hair and a beard.
Well, that is something to go on, isn't it?
I think so. There must be hundreds of red-headed men in London, but not many who also have broken front teeth. It narrows down the field somewhat. I think you'll find that the killer is a hired thug, experienced in this field. May I make a final suggestion?
By all means.
Try Limehouse. There is a pub called the Anchor near the river. It's the kind of place where all the seamen gather. There is a so-called gymnasium at the back. I've long suspected it as being a screen for various smuggling activities. If you get a couple of plain-clothes men to dress up as rough seamen, they may be able to pick up a lead on the man you're after.
Oh, yes, all right. I'll follow through on that, Holmes. Thanks.
After we left Montague Mews, Holmes went back to Baker Street, and I took a cab to my surgery. I'd delayed my work long enough. It was now quite dark, but I was able to see the many patients who'd been waiting for me. It was late when I eventually made my way back home.
Watson. I've been sniffing about in Limehouse. The Lestrade's men are there, standing out like sore thumbs. They were in the bar of the Anchor, but in a way they helped. They made my own investigations pass quite unnoticed. I found the murderer all right.
Oh, you have? Well, who is the man?
A most undesirable creature by the name of Joe Cornfoot. He's a burly 5'7", has red hair and a front tooth missing. I've advised Scotland Yard, and the Strade should call him in for questioning. They should be able to get the truth out of him.
Yes, but Holmes, even if they do get a confession out of this man, will that help you to trace what has happened to Robert Rivers?
Oh, I sincerely hope so, Watson. Well, there must be some connection. An important Admiralty man disappears and his coachman is murdered on the same night? No. There must be a link. It all depends on the Strade. Can he get at the truth? Huh. Oh, let's hope so. Oh, well, it's been a long day. I'm getting to bed. Good night.
Good night.
Now, come on, Cornfoot. Tell me the truth.
You ain't got nothing on me, Inspector. What makes you think I'm the man you want?
You've got a front tooth missing, haven't you? We've got one that will fit that gap in your mouth exactly.
So what? Lots of seamen have got teeth missing.
How did you come to lose yours?
Well, it must have been 2-3 nights ago. I was mixing it with another bloke in the gym at the back there. A fella called Max Welder. Caught me one in the face, knocked me bleeding tooth down my throat. Yeah, look, that's Welder's just come in. You can go and ask him if you like.
I will, later on. Tell me where you were last Monday night between the hours of 6 and midnight.
Well, see, I was here most of the time, yeah. The landlord will bear me out. He'll tell you that I had a bit of grub, a few pints, and then I went round to the gym, had a couple of rounds with the boys, and got my tooth knocked out and came back in here until closing time. As a matter of fact, because of me swelling face, I spent the night right here in one of the rooms at the Anchor.
You expect me to believe that?
Well, please yourself. I've got a dozen blokes to back me up. Just hold on, Jiffy. Alf Brown is the landlord. Hey, Alf, come over here. What did the inspector here has questioned me about where I was on Monday night. He seems to think I ain't telling the truth. You tell him.
Monday? Oh, let's see now. That will be the day you had your tooth knocked out, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yes, you've got such a nice supper, too. Stayed all night, if I recall. Yes. Well, there's Max Welder over there. He's the bloke who copped you one, wasn't he?
That's Max.
Shall I call him?
All right. You're all going to stick together. But I warn you, Alf Brown, this is a serious offense. If you are shielding a murderer lying on his behalf, then you are an accomplice, and you could end by swinging on the end of a rope. Remember that.
The next day was spent in trying to destroy Joe Cornfoot's alibi and continuing the search for Robert Rivers. Both ended in failure. A very frustrated Lestrade called in the late afternoon.
Oh, I just can't move him, Holmes. Can't make the charge stick. He simply says he's innocent, and that's that.
But he is not innocent. He is guilty. I've been fellowshipping away down at Limehouse, and Joe's pals are perjuring themselves to protect him. He is guilty, and he knows where Robert Rivers is. I'm sure of it.
Well, Holmes, I don't know how we're going to prove that you're right.
Well, I shall have to take active steps myself. There's no time to lose. We move tonight. First, I want you to send off 2 telegrams for me. One is to Mycroft, wherever he is in Europe. Oh, I think we should be here to take the responsibility. The second is to Sir Charles Drewings. Then I want you to have your men at the ready down at Limehouse, Lestrade. Watson, are you agreeable to accompany me?
Yes, of course.
Of course. Then at about 9 o'clock we will journey to Limehouse. Suitably clad, of course. I'm sure I can find old clothes you can get into. A large Inverness cape with big pockets that can contain a revolver or 2.
So you think it's going to be dangerous, Holmes?
We're tackling dangerous men. Let's go prepared. Come, let's get started. Now, Lestrade, this is what happened.
And so, on that rainy, windy night, Holmes and I took a cab to the east end of London. We made our way on foot to the Anchor Inn, but we didn't go in. It wasn't all that late. We waited down a side alley. After half an hour, 2 men left by the back entrance near the gymnasium. By the light of the gas lamps, Holmes identified them as Joe Cornfoot and Alf Brown, the landlord. We followed them swiftly and as silently as possible. They made their way towards the river, and at Luke's Wharf, they stopped and slipped into a small, disused warehouse. Holmes touched me by the sleeve and guided me through the darkness. Inside, the 2 men lit a lantern.
There you are. You see that kneeling down, look. About to lift up a wooden trapdoor in the floor.
Yes, but Holmes, what does all this mean?
Shush. You'll find out very soon. Wait.
Waste of time if you ask me. We know we're safe enough.
We've got to check, though. We can't be too careful. Here, give it on. No, you take that side. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Right. told you. No chance of anyone discovering him under the floorboards. Now, all we have to do is put him in the chest. Come on, now. Easy, no. That's got it. Close him in. Right. Now, tomorrow he goes aboard the Seawolf. And once out at sea, the captain drops the chest overboard, and that's that. We settle back and start collecting. Rich blokes, we're going to be nice and rich for the rest of our days.
The cops won't give up. They'll still be asking questions.
Don't let them. There's a lack of evidence. They can't make any accusations. Stick, it's worth taking a few risks.
One risk too many. Don't move. There are 2 revolvers pointing at you, and both my friend and I are crack shots. Keep them, Sergeant Watson. Let's get this straight in here. I know he's been following us. Right. Yes, well, the game is up for you two. You may have been lucky once, Cornfoot, but you don't need a false alibi for this evening's work. This time you face a charge of murder. The killing of Robert Rivers, whose body you have just placed in that sea chest.
Blasty, you clever swine. How do you ever find out?
You'll have plenty of time for puzzling out the answers when we have you behind bars.
Holmes, Watson. I take it you're all right?
Yes, there's nothing wrong with us. But our friends here have a lot of explaining to do. You'll find the dead body of Robert Rivers in that sea chest. Take these men away, and then...
All right, so long, you.
I think we'll make another arrest. A bigger fish this time. These are just 2 sprats to catch mackerel. Come, Watson. They're still important work.
Holmes and I left Lestrade in charge and took a waiting carriage back to Baker Street. There, we hastily changed from our old clothes, washed ourselves as cleanly and speedily as possible, and at exactly midnight, while the chimes of Big Ben ran out over the city, I heard someone pull our doorbell. It was Sir Charles Druing. Holmes' welcome was most cool.
I have to report that my case is closed, Druing. The body of Robert Rivers has been discovered. Thank you for answering my telegram by keeping this appointment, but you must have known that to stay away would have been more condemning than to face my accusations.
I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, but I think you do. You have been responsible for all of this, haven't you? You are the traitor who's been selling secrets abroad. The secrets of the Admiralty, new improved armory on our warships. You knew Mycroft might easily discover the leakage and who was responsible. So thinking to throw him off the scent, you turned to me. But you have already committed the major crime, hiring Joe Cornfoot to abduct Rivers. Then you wish to plant further evidence of his treachery by sending Cornfoot back into Rivers' house with enemy correspondence. But the coachman intervened. He was killed. Cornfoot fled. And you had Rivers killed and his body made ready for a final disappearance at sea.
You will have to prove all this.
Oh, yes. I certainly shall be able to do so. In your case, there is no lack of evidence. Would you care for a glass of brandy while we wait for Scotland Yard? They won't be long.
Sir Charles Druings remained quite silent. He refused to make any sort of statement when Lestrade and his men arrived to take him away. Joe Cornfoot and Alf Brown were arrested on charges of murder, and Holmes lost interest in the case completely. It was over a week later when we were sitting at breakfast.
Yes, I see 2 items of undoubted interest to you, Watson. One is the sudden death of Sir Charles Druings of a supposed heart attack. How convenient. Well, we won't bother to question that. The other is that Mrs. Irene Rivers has now become Mrs. Douglas Beresford after hearing of the death of her first husband, Robert Rivers. Well, I trust you have an uneventful day today, Watson. I certainly intend to do so.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Are you sure that'll be all, sir?
Yes, thank you, Gilpin. I shan't want anything more. By the way, how's your wife? Is she recovering from the operation?
Well, I'm happy to say there's progress, but it will be a long job, sir.
Yes, yeah. Buy her something with this. Cheer her up.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're most kind. I do appreciate it.
Oh, that's all right. I hope things go well for you. Good night, Gilpin. Good night, sir. Well, no use putting it off any longer.
We present the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
A matter of conscience.
James Beresford's death by his own hand shocked the London business world. The rumours had been well-founded. Never smoke without fire, the financiers said over their whiskies and sodas. Beresford's notes had been going about the city at 40% discount, and there were no takers. Settling day was the very next day. He realized he was a completely ruined man, and so he took the only way out.
James Beresford, the man who shot himself yesterday. He at least did not leave a wife and family.
Oh, no, quite. Poor devil. I know the man was a gambler and probably wreaked a great deal of havoc through his ruthlessness in business, but I can't help feeling sorry for him. He must have been in a desperate state of mind.
Indeed, yes. I met the gentleman on more than one occasion through my brother Mycroft in the Diogenes Club. He was on the surface a most amiable and fair-minded man. He was well liked by many and feared by most. A man like Beresford makes many enemies in the course of a lifetime.
Well, you mean that his enemies may have brought about his ruin?
Oh, undoubtedly. The point is that in order to outmaneuver his kind, one has to be within the inner circle, as it were.
Well, I don't think I follow that, Holmes.
Well, I mean only someone near to him, someone who held his confidence, would be able to trick him so cleverly that it would lead to total bankruptcy.
But you think he was driven to this by the treachery of his friends?
Oh, almost certainly. That may appear cynical of me, and I doubt if we shall ever learn the truth, but I should judge it to be so.
How dreadful that any man can be betrayed to that extent.
Quite. It is inhuman and immoral. But not a criminal matter, for no one has broken any laws. One can cheat a man quite legally by giving him false advice. If I sway your judgment to back a horse that has no chance of winning, well, whose fault is that?
Yes, well, I see what you mean. But if Beresford was forced to kill himself by someone else, I wouldn't like to have that person's conscience.
Ah, yes, a matter of conscience. Yes, that is a different matter. Ah, we have a visitor. I wonder who that can be so early on a cold November's morning.
Now, if it's anyone important, you have no need to fear of my presence. I've sadly neglected my patients due to this flu epidemic, and I must be about my business.
Oh, no, please don't go. I value your opinions. They give me the slant of the ordinary man in the street.
Oh, excuse me, a young lady to see you, Mr. Holmes. Refuses to give her name, and apparently she ain't got no car.
Well, our business must be urgent to ignore the weather and the social niceties. Show her in, Mrs. Hudson.
Oh, very well. This way, please. Thank you.
Do come in. May I introduce myself? I am Sherlock Holmes, and this is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
I know who you are. I have often seen you, Mr. Holmes.
Do come nearer the fire. Take a seat. Some coffee?
No, thank you. I cannot stop. And you will possibly ask me to leave anyway. You see, I want some advice, but I'm not prepared to give you my name or address.
That is at least honest. You could have lied about those facts and hoped to get away with it.
I don't lie. I always tell the truth. I want you to advise me on the correct course of punishing a man who has forced another man to commit suicide.
Ah, that is a most curious request. Something which is both pertinent and topical. I take it that you're referring to the death of Mr. James Beresford.
How did you guess that?
It's really not at all hard. The case is splashed all over the newspapers. Watson and I were discussing the tragedy and the poor fellow's state of mind just before you called.
Suicide while the balance of his mind was disturbed. That what you think? Nonsense. He was driven to it by Max Corbett.
Max Corbett? Yes, they started as partners, is that not so? Very many years ago. An enterprise known as International Supplies. Very ambitious and very successful.
It was all James Beresford's skill and business acumen. But Corbett and his cronies got to know more.
They deceived him in various different ways under different names. Beresford trusted them. He was unaware, even up to the last 6 months, of the bitterness and hatred he was faced with. Can you believe it?
Oh, yes. Please continue. You're telling me very little that I didn't know.
Beresford was forced in the end to turn to moneylenders, only to find that they also were puppets of Max Corbett's men. Then came the final squeeze. It was cold-blooded and calculated, and at the moment these men are pretending to be heartbroken, but they are inwardly delighted. They should be punished. They must be punished. Particularly Max Corbett. Do you not agree with me, Mr. Holmes?
My dear young lady, as I pointed out to Watson only a short while ago, this cannot be regarded as a criminal matter. Everything you say may be true. You may even be able to produce certain facts as proof, but there is no way that you're going to pin a crime onto Max Corbett. If you start to spread these rumors, you can lay yourself open to an action for slander. But Corbett is too clever to be caught like that.
You mean that my hands are tied? That there is nothing I or anyone else can do?
I didn't say that. I shall have to give the matter some thought. I wonder... Watson, while you're doing your rounds, will you be anywhere within the vicinity of the Diogenes Club?
I can be, Holmes, yes.
Then would you be good enough to deliver a note to my brother Mycroft? He's bound to be there around lunchtime. Excuse me a moment. Paper and pen. Envelope. Yes.
Mr. Holmes, it is quite clear that my worst fears have been confirmed. I am doing no good here, merely wasting your time. I'd better leave.
No. Please don't go. There you are, Watson. Now, if you could see that this is delivered as soon as possible.
Very well. I shall do my best. Oh, will you excuse me now? I'm a doctor and have to attend to patients. I shall call back later, Holmes. Good morning to you.
Now, young lady, answer me one thing. If I agree to help you, you will give me your name and address here and now?
I got to the Diogenes Club just before lunch and left Holmes's note for his brother. The place seemed unusually crowded. I met a few people I knew who invited me for a drink, and it being a cold day, I accepted gratefully. It was while in one of the rooms that I heard the name Max Corbett mentioned.
Ah, Max. Max Corbett. Might have known that you'd be here today. Toasting to success.
I don't know what you mean, Wilder. I came to collect some mail. And now I'm off to see my fiancée. That's worth a toast.
Ah, yes, the Honourable Abigail Stratton. Yes, I read of your engagement. Congratulations.
Thank you. But today is not a happy one. Not after hearing of poor Beresford shooting himself.
Poor Beresford indeed. Cut out the rot, Max. I happen to have been on the right side when international supplies went under, so I'm not complaining. But I'm not a fool. You and I and the rest of the crowd caused it to happen.
That's a lie.
It's true when you know it. You put Beresford out of the game as surely as if you pulled the trigger of that revolver yourself. You played every dirty trick you could to beat him. I've got to hand it to you. You got what you wanted. Mind you, what Abigail Stratton would think. Well, lucky for you, she doesn't understand business deals.
Now, you keep Abigail out of this.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. She's your problem. I wonder how you'll explain it all. Tell me something, Max. Were you very afraid of him?
Afraid of him? Afraid of Beresford? No, of course not. Not in the slightest.
Well, I'd say you were scared stiff. That's why you couldn't fight straight. You've made a fortune out of him, but you had to do it crookedly. James Beresford was a gambler, but a fair one. Something you'll never be, a fair fighter.
Now, that's enough, Wilder. I'm not staying here to listen to this. And you'd better watch your step. You're right when you say I have influence now, more than I've ever had. So be careful.
You can't frighten me, Max. I've taken all precautions.
Excuse me, Mr. Corbett. You called for your mail, but this one must have been overlooked. It was at the desk. How he got there, I can't say. Must have just arrived by hand.
Oh. Well, thank you. Excuse me, Wilder. What? Well, that's strange. That handwriting, it looks like...
Go on. Open it up then, old boy. Might be important.
We can't end it like this. You cannot get rid of me. I shall always be near. I will call upon you at your home in Eaton Square next Thursday evening, exactly at 9 o'clock. You will see me. You cannot avoid it. Jimmy. Oh, what the devil?
What's up, Max? You look as though you've seen a ghost. Not bad news, I hope. Something frightened you? Again? What is it this time? Something real or something imaginary? Or is it the fact that you have a guilty conscience?
The next few days were very busy ones for me. I was either out in the cold, misty London streets visiting sick patients or attending to them in my surgery. I hardly saw Holmes, and when I did, he was usually coming in or going out of 221B Baker Street so muffled up that I could scarcely recognize him. Then, about 2 days after the inquest on the death of James Beresford, we had a caller. The morning was a foggy one. Gas lamps burned in the streets long after daylight. It was surprisingly cold, and Mrs. Hudson arrived later than usual. She was not pleased to receive a visitor in these circumstances.
Oh, now, what on earth? Oh, it's going to be one of those days. Yes?
I want to see Sherlock Holmes, Mark.
I'm not so sure that you can. Have you an appointment?
No, but it's early. He must be at home. That is, if he isn't still in bed.
Mr. Holmes is always up early, but he doesn't like to be disturbed at this hour. Now, if you give me...
No, look here, that's enough. Let me in. I didn't come all this way to argue with a common washerwoman on a doorstep.
Common washerwoman, indeed.
The rooms are upstairs. Very well, I'll find my own way.
You can't charge him like this, sir. You want to know who you are and what your business is. It's my job to look after him and see that he isn't put upon by the likes of people like you.
Come in.
Yes, what is it?
This man pushed his way in, sir, and he demands to see you. Mr. Holmes, I couldn't keep him out.
That's all right. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. You may come back to clear breakfast in 10 minutes.
Oh, common washerwoman indeed.
Come in, Mr. Corbett. Take a seat. You know Dr. Watson?
How do you do?
No, I don't know, Watson, but I'm glad to see you remember me, Holmes. We've met a couple of times at the club, haven't we?
That is correct. May I ask the purpose of this surprise visit? Oh, it's all right. You may speak freely in front of my friend. I have no secrets from him. Well?
I'm being persecuted, and I want you to put a stop to it.
Persecuted? You mean someone is threatening you? You're in bodily danger in some way? A threat to your well-being? Then why not go to the police?
Oh, no. There's nothing tangible for the police to get their teeth into. It's far too subtle. The fact is that since my good friend and ex-partner James Beresford killed himself, someone's been... persecuting me. I've received a note. Here, I'll show it to you. It was delivered at the club. It's a stupid joke, of course, someone with a perverted sense of humour. It's written, as you can see, as though it came from Jimmy Beresford. The handwriting is the same.
My dear Corbett, if you know this is just a malicious trick, then why not burn it and forget the whole matter?
Because it won't stop there. It hasn't. I'm being watched, followed. I know I am. And I've seen him. Not once or twice, but several times.
Seen him? Seen whom?
Well, someone, disguised as Jimmy. Okay, coming out of the fog. Why, only yesterday I banged into him. I could have sworn it actually was him. Tall, big, dressed in the way that Jimmy always dressed. Even the same cigars, the smell. The fact is that someone's trying to scare me, break my concentration.
If that was the objective, it certainly succeeded. You seem very distrait.
Well, it's getting on my nerves. Well, of course it is. I'm too busy a man to be bothered by such petty things. I'm going to get married soon. This going on a moment longer. You've got to stop it, Holmes.
I fail to see quite what I can do.
Well, catch whoever it is behind all this. I'll pay you any amount of money you want. Now, look, today is Tuesday. And in that blasted note, it says that whoever it is going to call on me at 9 o'clock on Thursday.
Well?
Well, here's your chance. You've got 2 days. Now, catch whoever it is that's tormenting me. Arrest him. Hunt him out. Scare the living daylights out of him. Warn him that if this persecution continues, he'll be dealt with. I don't quite know what methods you can use. I don't care. Just tell me how much you want to offer me complete protection.
Mr. Corbett, I'm a private detective. I only deal in very important criminal matters. I am not a bodyguard. And cases like this are of no interest to me whatsoever.
You mean you won't take the case?
May I clear now, sir?
I do not consider that there is a case, Corbett. Yes, Mrs. Hudson. You may take away the breakfast things and see this gentleman to his carriage.
Oh, very well. But you'll be sorry for all this. And I don't need that creature to show me out. Goodbye.
Well, we've had some ill-mannered people in these here rooms, Mr. Holmes, but he must rate as the worst chink. No reach, that's what the French should call him.
I am inclined to agree, but forget it, Mrs. Holmes.
But he called me a common washerwoman and a creature.
It really doesn't matter.
That's all very well. But people in glass houses shouldn't try to put the straw that breaks the camel's back through the eye of a needle.
A plethora of mixed metaphors, Mrs. Hudson, but you made your point.
Ta!
After Max Corbett left, Holmes was strangely silent. He returned to his seat by the fire and relit his pipe. He knew far more than he'd told me, and wasn't going to tell me more. I packed my things and prepared to leave on my daily rounds. As I put on my overcoat and gloves, he said, "You will be free this evening, won't you, Watson?" "I have no appointments, but I doubt if I shall be home before 7.
That's all right. Ample time to get over to Eaton Square by 9.
Where Corbett lives. Where to pay a call upon him?"
That's right. Although I'm quite sure he will have another unexpected visitor before then, but we must be ready for all emergencies.
A young lady to see you, sir. Her card.
Oh, thank you. Miss Gillian Marsh, secretary to Mr. James Beresford. What's the time here?
8 o'clock, Mr. Corbett.
Oh, all right. Show in.
Very good, sir. This way, please, miss.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Corbett.
Good evening.
I don't think we've met. I was Mr. Beresford's secretary. I have called because I wanted to know if you could help me. Have you any similar work for me to do? I'm very experienced in your type of business, and I'm now unemployed. I'd be grateful for some help.
Well, sit down, Miss Marsh. This seems a most odd time for you to call, hardly business hours. But let's not bother about that. You say you work for Jimmy Beresford. I never saw you in his office.
I worked for him at his home. I was a private secretary.
I see. Then you must know all his correspondence. Tell me, Miss Marsh, have you ever seen this note before?
James Beresford's writing. Shall see you, Eaton Square. Call on Tuesday evening. Exactly at 9.
What's that? Tuesday evening? No, it says Thursday evening.
Oh, no, you're mistaken. I know this writing. It's Tuesday.
But that's today. I made all the preparations for Thursday. I'm going to Paris that morning. It can't be Tuesday. It can't be. It's 8 o'clock.
And Jimmy will be here within the hour. I'll leave you to face him, Mr. Corbett.
No, don't go. Please don't. I have to think. You see, I've been having the strangest hallucinations. I've been seeing Beresford ever since he died. He's been standing on street corners, at the club, getting out of carriages, just standing there, haunting me. And now he's supposed to be coming here within the hour. Are you sure that note says Tuesday?
Of course. Look for yourself. How odd. Of course, even the signature could be misinterpreted. Instead of Jimmy, it could be Jilly. Oh, I'd realized that before.
Before? You mean you've seen this note before? Now, tell me. Tell me all about it. I'll pay you well. Anything you can do to put my mind at rest. Just prove this is a stupid, malicious joke, and I'll set my mind at rest. Please help me.
You really are frightened, aren't you? Frightened that the doorbell will ring, and through that door will walk the ghost of James Beresford to torment your soul. Well, all right. I'll set your crooked little mind at rest. No one will be coming here.
How do you know?
Because I wrote that note. I wrote it after he died. You see, I wasn't his secretary. I am his niece. Uncle Jimmy was one of the best. You had him hunted down and you were glad when he was killed. Well, I wanted to make you suffer as he must have suffered. I could imitate Uncle's handwriting. I did it because I wanted to see what kind of a man you were. I've proved it. You are a cheap coward.
Oh, is that so? Indeed. Well, don't think that a chit of a girl like you is going to show me up. You think you've taught me a lesson? Well, I'll teach you now, here and now. I'll show you to start with.
There, you... How dare you? Stop! Just stop it!
Just show me up, will you? You little vixen over here. How's this?
Right, that's enough, Corbett. Leave her alone. Watson, take care of him.
Come on, who do you want me to deal with you?
You all right, Miss Marsh?
Yes, I'm all right.
Maximilian! Just what does all this mean?
Abigail. Well, how did you... Why are you here?
I was asked by Mr. Sherlock Holmes to come here this evening. He said I would learn something to my advantage. I seem to have done so. I'm leaving. I have nothing to say to you now, and I shall have nothing to say to you in the future.
But I can explain all this. I can explain. It's a trick.
Perhaps, Miss Stratton, you would like to take this note. It will explain that what you have seen was premeditated. Max always plans everything, down to the last detail.
Thank you. I'm grateful I found out the worst before it's too late. Good night, gentlemen. Goodbye, Maximilian.
It wasn't until we were back at Baker Street that Holmes confessed his part in the unmasking of Max Corbett. He puffed at his pipe with satisfaction.
You see, I agreed with Gillian Marsh. Something should be done to curb this man's ambitions. So I plotted with her to show up the weaker side of his nature. I even impersonated James Beresford. I'm quite good at disguises, you know, and could well remember how the man looked and walked. Then, when we had preyed upon his mind long enough, we brought things to a climax, making sure that his fiancée, Abigail Stratton, saw what kind of a man he really was. Now, rumours will spread after this. I should think it will be many long days before he dares show his face at the Diogenes Club, for instance. Hardly a criminal case, I agree, but one where I think justice has been done. Don't you agree, Watson?
Oh, Joe, yes, very clever, although perhaps not entirely ethical.
Well, the man is defeated. In a much more gracious manner than he has defeated many others. My conscience is quite clear.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
There's a nice fire going here in the morning room, and Roger has arranged all your letters on the desk. Let's have the morning quietly by ourselves, shall we, Felix?
Oh, anything to say, my dear. It has turned cold, hasn't it? Yes, I'm content to stay at home doing the correspondence.
I have letters to write also.
What's this? That's odd. Writing seems familiar. And a foreign stamp, of course it does. Dear Droops, this will come as a shock to her just... I can't believe it. It's signed Brawny.
What is it, dear? You've gone quite pale. Are you ill?
Well, this letter, it claims to be from my older brother, Matthew, but he died. He died many years ago.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Eldest Son.
Looking back over the years and the hundreds of cases I've chronicled about Sherlock Holmes, I recall one of the most interesting to be the Chancery action brought by Matthew Inglethorpe for the recovery of his lawful inheritance. It was about the turn of the century that Sir Rufus Inglethorpe died. He had lived for many years on his own at a vast country estate known as the Elms, near Canterbury. After his death, his younger son Felix and his wife Jennifer took over the house. For a while, all was peaceful. And then a ripple of rumour began to run through London society. The newspapers and social publications hinted that all was not well at the Elms. I think it was at that point that Holmes started taking an interest.
What do you know of the Inglethorpe family, Watson?
Well, little or nothing, Holmes. It's a name that is being continually bandied about in society, but as I take little interest in such affairs, I confess I'm, well, more or less ignorant. Well, why should I be interested?
Well, because the family appears to have the seeds of destruction planted within itself. I've noticed that it occurs regularly in history and continues right until the present day. Now, let me see. I have several old scrapbooks here that would prove invaluable upon family references. Now, let me see. Yes, I think this might tell me. Yes, here we are. There was an Admiral Inglethorpe who greatly distinguished himself in the wars against the Dutch. And, of course, Sir Rufus, who died recently, was a famous army man. Yes, it was well known that he had an ungovernable temper. He ruled the family with a rod of iron. And inevitably, the eldest son, Matthew, kicked against this imposed discipline once he became of age. There was an enormous row, and Matthew left the estate never to return. For a while, he wrote secretly to his mother, but she soon became ill and died. Matthew is thought to have died in Africa.
And, I seem to have heard those sort of stories so many times in connection with wealthy families.
I agree. Also, it seems that the daughter, Phoebe, caused a sensation by marrying an actor named Clarence Howard. As might have been expected, Sir Rufus lost his famous temper, and she also left the Elms. Yes, they also travelled abroad, America mostly.
And who was left?
Well, just the other son, Felix, who left only to marry a wealthy society beauty, Jennifer Trent. It's they who are the present owners of the Elms.
Well, this may be of interest to some people, but I'm surprised that you find it so, Holmes. After all, the domestic squabble of the Inglethorpe family is a family matter. There's nothing criminal going on, surely.
Not at the moment, but there could be. You see, Felix Inglethorpe used to be a member of the Diogenes Club. He's recently resigned, and my brother Mycroft attributes it to yet another family scandal. We appear to have a visitor. Now, this could be most interesting. You see, Mycroft was mentioning my name only recently to Jennifer Inglethorpe, who was distressed at her husband not using the club. Now, I wonder.
A lady to see you, Mr. Holmes. Says she's sorry she doesn't have an appointment. But here's her card, and she's waiting below. She's very nice. Proper lady, beautifully dressed.
Thank you. Yes. Show the lady up, Mrs. Hudson.
Very good, sir.
Well, I'd better put the scrapbook away, Watson. It makes it look a little too obvious. The lady is indeed Mrs. Jennifer Inglethorpe.
And it is a coincidence, Holmes.
No, not really. She must have seen the papers and realized things were coming to a head.
Mrs. Inglethorpe.
Good day to you, madam. Pray do come in. It's a very cold day, but we have a good fire.
Thank you. But...
Allow me to introduce you. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. You may feel free to speak to him as you would to me.
This is a most delicate matter.
Well, I'll leave you if you wish, madam.
No. Your brother Mycroft has told me much about you, Mr. Holmes. And you too, Doctor. May I remove my cape?
Please, allow me.
Thank you.
Now, do sit down near the fire.
I shall be most comfortable here, thank you. I hardly know where to begin.
It is regarding your husband and the fact that there is a claimant to the Elms estates. His elder brother Matthew, who was thought to have been dead these 20 years, has now returned to this country, and as the eldest son of the family, maintains that the Elms is his. Is that not so?
Mr. Holmes, I cannot think how you know this. We have done our best to suppress these facts.
But some news has leaked to the daily press, and speculation is now rife. I do sympathize, Mrs. Inglethorpe, but I hardly see how I can help.
I'm so confused, Mr. Holmes. I thought if I could present all the facts to you, you might be able to make me see the whole affair in a more reasonable light, and then I might be of more support to my husband in his dilemma.
Very well. I'm willing to listen to whatever trouble you find yourself in.
Well, it is much as you suggest. Matthew, Felix's brother, has returned after over 20 years. He approached the solicitors, Coins and Blanco, and they have drawn up a sworn affidavit regarding the whole of his activities. He says his life is an open book, and anyone is willing to question him on any matter. My husband agreed to meet him privately, and, well, he is inclined to believe that this stranger from the grave is his own brother.
I see.
But we cannot just accept his testimony at face value. We are therefore prepared to wait. If the matter reaches court, it will create a sensational scandal. Phoebe, that is Felix's sister, who has returned to this country, now that both her father and her husband are dead, she refuses to believe that this man is her elder brother. Phoebe and Felix have never got along at all well. But this matter has thrown them together again.
I see.
Felix invited her down to the Elms, and the arguments have never stopped. Things came to a head a few nights ago. We had sought legal advice, of course, but a frank discussion brought many facts out into the open. Felix, as always, was kindness itself, but Phoebe was adamant. She impressed upon Wilfred Simmons, our family solicitor, that she would never accept this imposter.
I tell you, Mr. Simmons, that Matthew is dead. I know he is dead.
This man is an imposter. We've only to take him to court and trick him once or twice, and we can break him.
But, Phoebe, the letter, the handwriting. Well, we have nothing to compare it with, but the fact that he called me Droops. No one else ever called me that. Well, I mean, since we were children, except Matthew. And I always refer to him as Brawn. You know that, but how could an imposter have found that out?
I don't know, but he has somehow. Look, if Matthew had been alive in recent years, do you think we wouldn't have heard from him? Of course we would. He would have been sponging upon us, writing, begging letters.
Oh, come. He may have become rich, successful, made good. After all, your own husband, Clarence...
Well, Matthew would never have become successful. Clarence might have started off as an actor, but he ended as a theatre impresario, a name to be reckoned with in America. And he did it purely by hard work. Matthew was a drifter. He put down no roots and never worked unless he could help it. He was penniless when he died in Africa.
Phoebe, you can't say that. You don't know it. You're guessing. And Mr. Simmons is right. I've never received a begging letter from Matthew in my life.
Well, I have.
What?
You have?
Yes, many times. Though I suppose he must have reasoned that because I left the fold, that I would be more sympathetic than you. I've received about 5, all told, over the years.
But why didn't you ever tell us?
My dear brother, we've hardly been on speaking terms during the last 20 years, have we?
Can you produce any of these letters? We could compare the handwriting and then...
No, of course I can't produce them. I didn't keep them. At least I don't remember doing so. I'll go through my things, but it's very doubtful.
Did you ever reply to the letters?
Once or twice. I was even stupid enough to take pity on him once. Many years ago, we were in America. He was there, too, drifting about the San Francisco docks on his way to Africa. I sent him money. He never acknowledged it. Then I had another begging letter from Africa. It was just before Khartoum. He must have died out there about the time General Gordon was killed. Since then, I haven't heard a thing.
But, Phoebe, this doesn't prove a thing. I mean...
No, wait a minute. This may help. If we confront this man and ask him casually if he ever wrote to his sister, and if so, when and where, it will place him in an extraordinarily difficult position. He'll be forced to give us facts and figures. If you can only find one of those letters, Phoebe, then I think we shall have the proof that we need.
I shall look. As I say, I hold out very little hope. But please, don't let us give him the chance to do even greater research into Matthew's past. I beg you, leave it until he tries to take the whole matter to court. Let us keep all this up our sleeves.
I'd sooner settle it out of court without a scandal.
Do you want to give away the family fortune, the home? Just hand it over to this man without fighting him? I always thought you were spiteful.
Oh, no, please.
Phoebe, you haven't seen him. I'm sure it is Matthew. He looks like Matthew, speaks like him.
You can remember how he looks and speaks after 25 years? You were a youngster when you last saw him. You can't believe it's Matthew. And I won't let you hand everything over to him.
Now, please. Let's keep all this to ourselves, at least for the next few days. Just let us wait and leave the next move to him. Now, what do you say? You agree?
And that is where we are at the moment, Mr. Holmes. I came to ask your opinion. What do you think we should do? Fight the matter in court or not? What do you say?
Jennifer Inglethorpe leaned forward in her chair and looked eagerly at Sherlock Holmes. He'd been listening intently to his story, his dressing gown wrapped around his tall frame, his head sunk upon his chest as he gazed into the fire. He placed the tips of his fingers together and then said,
I advise you to remain quiet. Your sister-in-law is correct in one respect. In a position like this, the guilty parties will eventually give themselves away. But I think in this case quite a lot of rope will have to be played out before the culprits hang themselves.
I was surprised that Holmes phrased his reply in the plural, but Mrs. Inglethorpe seemed quite satisfied. She rose to her feet.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. But will you promise me one thing? If at any time you can take an active part in the conclusion of this affair, you will do so regardless of our personal feelings.
I will give you that promise, yes. Good day to you, Mrs. Inglethorpe.
After that, some weeks passed before a court action was publicly announced. It immediately hit the headlines. There was general sympathy for the claimant. It was a romantic story. The return of the repentant prodigal son, penniless, to take what was rightfully his. It lasted for days. Some witnesses swore Matthew Inglethorpe was genuine. others that he wasn't. Of course, the cross-questioning of the man himself was the highlight. Sir Arthur Wolseley, for the defence, subjected him to hours of interrogation and threw some very awkward questions at him.
Now, tell me, we have heard of your travels throughout the world, how you dropped the name Matthew Inglethorpe for the less conspicuous name Ian Thorpe. During this time, did you ever attempt to communicate with your family at the Elms?
No.
You didn't write any letters to your father, brother, or sister?
I didn't write to my father or my brother at the Elms. I did, however, write to my sister Phoebe.
Ah. Can you remember how many letters you wrote and the times and places from which you wrote them?
I wrote 5 letters in all. I can't remember the exact dates. I know the last one was from Africa. The time before that, I was in San Francisco, and Phoebe was kind enough to send me money for my passage to Africa. I arrived there in 1881, just after the defeat at Majuba. I wrote again some 4 years later, at the beginning of 1885, when General Gordon was slain. That was the last time I tried to communicate with her.
Well, Watson, he's got round that one perfectly. If he can only prove his handwriting, he's in a very strong position. Yes, I think they're going to bring his sister for the defence.
Phoebe Howard was calm, but I suspected very angry as she stepped forward to give her evidence. She denied any resemblance of the claimant to her brother, refusing to see any likeness. As to the letters, she spoke with total conviction.
The handwriting on the letter my brother Felix received, calling him by those nicknames, and the handwriting on the letters I received, is, to the best of my knowledge, completely different.
It is a pity that you did not keep those letters.
I would have done, had I known this would come about. But who keeps begging letters for 5 years? Naturally, I destroyed them all.
Naturally. But what makes you so sure that the claimant is not your long-lost brother? What about his evidence, his knowledge?
He could have found out all he's told us from a long association with Matthew. In one of his letters, Matthew mentioned a bosom friend who travelled with him. They were in Africa together. I believe that bosom friend to be here, sitting in this court, impersonating Matthew.
In this court?
Please, Your Honor, may I make a statement?
Proceed.
My brother Matthew was the black sheep of the family. I was also treated as an outcast when I married the man I loved. Can't you see that if this man was Matthew, I should be delighted that he now came back to redress so many wrongs? I've no love for the past. I would dearly love to see a change in the old ways. If I truly believed this man was Matthew, I should embrace him with open arms. But as it is, I cannot believe him. I do not know him.
But I know you, and our secret regarding the governess. Yes, Governess Grimsby. We got her fired by placing stolen jewelry in her wardrobe, didn't we? You and me. And no one else knows this, not even Felix. Or have you forgotten that?
I can't.
Great heavens, Holmes.
He has won the day.
For that, it was literally all over, bar the shouting. Judgment was entered for Matthew Inglethorpe, and he was cheered when he left the law courts. There was great admiration also for Felix Inglethorpe when he was seen to shake hands most heartily with his elder brother. Phoebe Howard, however, heavily veiled and muffled in her furs, hastily climbed into a waiting hansom and vanished. The case was over.
So, you think the case is over, do you, Watson?
I beg your pardon, Holmes?
Well, ever since we returned home, you've been wearing a satisfied smile, yet you haven't said a word. The events at the law courts could hardly have been more dramatic, could they? It's caught the public imagination, and everyone is pleased with the result.
Except Phoebe Howard.
Oh, I don't think she'll be too distressed.
What do you mean by that?
Well, simply that in her own words, she was prepared to embrace her real brother with open arms. I predict that it will not be long before she and Matthew are reconciled.
Well, then the case really will be over. And if they'll all learn the lessons of the past, then perhaps this family will not fail again, as you think they're doomed to.
I wish I could feel as confident as you, Watson, but I'm afraid I still think there is a considerable way to go. And until something positive occurs, well, we must just wait and see, mustn't we?
And after that, I was determined to forget the whole affair. I concentrated upon my work, although word did reach me that Holmes' prediction regarding a family reconciliation had in fact taken place. It seems that once again it was Felix Inglethorpe's generous nature that brought it about.
Come. Surely it is time that we behaved sensibly. The facts have been faced. It is only natural that one should feel a certain animosity, but we must all try to rise above the circumstances. After all, Jennifer and I are the ones who stand to lose most. We are making preparations to leave the Elms. We shall return to town and establish our home there.
You don't have to hurry in any way, Felix. And in fact, I should appreciate it if you could stay on and assist me in running the estates.
No, I could not do that. They are yours to do as you like with.
And what of you, Phoebe?
I shall be all right. No need to worry about me.
But these vast rooms, the running of the house. I'm still unmarried. There's no one here to play hostess. If you would consider returning to the Elms after all these years, I am more than willing to adjust to your taking your share.
That is very generous of you, Matthew. But surely, after all that has happened, after all I have said about you, blackened your name.
Will you consider joining me back at the old home and trying to make a future happy for both of us? Will you, Phoebe?
It was shortly after Phoebe returned to the Elms that Sherlock Holmes made a rather unusual request. He'd been to see Jennifer Inglethorpe and her husband Felix, and had somehow contrived to get us all invited down to the Elms one Sunday. I confess I could see no reason for this, but curiosity made me accept the invitation. It was clear from the onset that Matthew and his sister Phoebe were slightly put out by our visit. Felix introduced us, and immediately Holmes dominated the proceeding.
I'm extremely sorry if this seems to be an intrusion in any way, but really, Mrs. Inglethorpe, you've only yourself to blame.
Me? I don't understand.
When you came to see me at my rooms in Baker Street, you made a request, and that was that if ever I saw fit to take an active part in the family drama, I should do so regardless of anyone's feelings, remember?
Yes, of course. But I don't understand.
No, but you will. Now, Mrs. Howard, it is with you that I shall start.
By all means, Mr. Holmes. What exactly is it that you want?
The truth, from your own lips. You see, it's one thing to cause emotional scenes with clever stories, but quite another to prevent those lies being verified. I have a good many friends in the United States. It did not take me long to confirm or deny the facts.
I don't know what you mean.
Your marriage, your husband's so-called success story, and his apparent death. Of course, you married the actor Clarence Howard, and you did travel extensively with him, but he was out of work most of the time, wasn't he?
What are you talking about?
You ended up in cheap lodgings in Boston. Then you and he disappeared from the scene. There is no record of his death or burial in the United States, and no one has ever heard of him in the world of the theatrical impresarios where he's supposed to have made his name.
Now, look here, Holmes. What are you insinuating? Are you trying to say
I am saying that Clarence Howard didn't die. He remained very much alive. But Matthew Inglethorpe, the real Matthew Inglethorpe, did die out in Africa under the name of Ian Thorpe. Records can be checked there, you see.
Then this man is an imposter.
Of course he is an imposter. He is Clarence Howard.
Clarence?
Of course.
Holmes, I beg of you.
How else could someone give such a convincing performance? Retain all the facts and details of family life, unless he was a trained actor able to sustain a characterization.
And all the information he gave us was
drummed into him by Phoebe, his own wife. She alone knew the secrets of the family and groomed him to perfection in the part. And then, very cleverly, she took the role of being his arch enemy, trying to trick him. It was a performance almost as good as his.
This is unbelievable.
Of course, he won the claim. Against all odds, he had proved himself. Everyone was taken in. In time, a reconciliation with Phoebe, and then, of course, they could take over the Elms and the estates while you bowed out quietly. How long they would have been able to sustain the roles of brother and sister is a matter of speculation. Well, what course of action you take is up to you. I should guess that the next court case will be even more of a sensation than the first one. Don't you agree?
Holmes and I returned to Baker Street immediately, and I cannot imagine the scenes that must have taken place back at the Elms. Once again, I was at a loss to know how Sherlock Holmes had arrived at the truth.
Every little detail was so overwhelmingly glib. His evidence, I mean. He remembered everything. The man knew far too much at just the right time. And the one member of the family who was never mentioned was Clarence Howard. It was worth checking up on. Facts. That's what detection is made of, Watson. Lies can never replace facts. Oh, she was very clever, but just a little too clever, don't you think?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Are you back?
Oh, Dr. Watson, you're back. Thank heavens for that. I wonder if I heard the footsteps on the stairs, if it might have been Eden.
Oh, Mrs. Hudson, do you mean that he isn't home yet?
No, not for 4 days and 4 nights he hasn't been here. Oh, Doctor, I'm that worried about him. What could have happened?
Oh, no, Mrs. Hudson. You know what Holmes is like. He's often disappeared for days at a time. Oh, it's due to his work. It's customary. He'll turn up soon, so don't worry. Is supper ready?
Yes, it's been ready since 8. But you know, this time I'm really worried about Mr. Holmes. I'm really worried about him. I'm worried sick and that.
Yes, well, this time I'm worried too.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes. Tonight,
The Rubber-Faced Man. I was accustomed to Sherlock Holmes' sudden disappearances. I knew he had many private hideaways in various parts of London, rooms in lodging houses where he could assume another name and identity. Master of disguise, he could mix with any class, from the lowest beggar to the highest in society. Always, of course, it was connected with his work. And regarding his current case, he was very secretive. I told myself I should hear in due course and tried not to worry, but there was a nagging doubt in my mind that all was not as it should be. And so, later that night, when I heard a commotion upon the stairs, I naturally thought Holmes had returned, but...
I'm so sorry to burst in like this, Dr. Watson, but Amy Castle is here and she says she must see you.
Oh, yes, of course.
I must apologise for calling like this, Doctor, but I am in very serious trouble.
No, that's all right, Amy. Come in, and that'll be all, Mrs. Hudson. Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. All right.
Right, now, come and sit down by the fire. Now, tell me what's troubling you, Amy. That husband of yours again?
That's right, Doctor. It's the old business, the smoking. You've tried to get him to break the habit many times, but, well, it's the opium. Hugo's been away for over 2 days now. Well, you know what it's like. He can't keep away from the stuff. Of course, I've been making the usual inquiries, and I have traced him.
Well, where is he?
Well, he's in an opium den called the Green Pagoda in Upper Julius Street. You know the road that runs parallel to the river off Bell Lane. I want to go and get him out, but I daren't, not on my own. So I thought, well, if you came with me as his physician, you could get in there and talk some sense into him. Well, I'll come with you if you like.
Well, I don't think that would serve any useful purpose, Amy. It would only distress you. I'll order a hansom and get over there straight away. Now, you go home and wait. I'll find Hugo for you, so don't worry. Hugo Castle had always been a problem patient. Like thousands of others in London, he was a constant visitor to the opium dens that clustered around the dock area. The Green Pagoda was one of the more respectable of these houses of iniquity. Near the river, to the east of London Bridge, it had a single door opening off a narrow alley. I entered, and by the low flickering of the oil lamps set against the damp stone walls, made my way into a low, long room filled with thick, brown opium smoke. Wooden berths like those in an ancient galley lined the walls. Faint sounds of Eastern music came from the gin shop beyond the bead curtains, but no one listened. Groups of huddled creatures bent over red circles of light where the burning poison waxed and waned in metal bowls. Most men lay silent. Some were groaning or whispering, mumbling their own distorted thoughts aloud. As I entered, a sallow Oriental slipped from the shadows to offer the customary pipe.
Evening, master. Comfortable bed, very good pipe. Long sleep and good dreams. This way.
Thank you. No, I'm not here for that. I seek a friend. He's around here somewhere. Would you allow me to look and... yes. Yes, he is. Yes, I think that's him. Hugo Castle.
Dr. Watson, it is Watson, isn't it? Watson, my good fellow. What is it? What time is it?
It's nearly 11 at night.
11? I must go home. Go home. I've been here all evening.
You've been here some 2 days. Now, pull yourself together, man. It's Friday, October the 19th.
I tell you what, it can't be. I thought it was Wednesday. You're trying to frighten me, muddle my thoughts.
Well, they couldn't be more muddled than this foul stuff has made them. Right, now look, I have a cab waiting, so come along. Let me get you out.
I only had one pipe, just one, two at the most.
Right, come along. I'll pay for you, and you'll feel better in the fresh night air.
Oh, give me money? Money?
No, not for you, poor wretch that you are. I cannot help everyone.
Shh, softly, Watson. Holmes. Hush, you'll spoil everything. Keep your voice down.
What is it?
Look, I'll explain on our way home. I'll pay for that poor castle creature and get him into a cab. Send him packing and wait for me on the corner. I shall be for 10 minutes. Hurry, Watson, hurry.
I did as Holmes requested. Hugo Castle made no protest as I bundled him into a cab and, paying the driver, gave Hugo's home address. I was confident that Amy Castle would take good care of him, and once he'd recovered, give him a sound talking to. I would call in the morning and do my best to make him break the pernicious habit. Meanwhile, I waited on the corner. Holmes arrived, still dressed in beggar's rags, and joined me in another hansom. As we clattered our way homeward, Holmes said with a chuckle,
If you could have seen your face in the lamplight, Watson. I suppose you think I've added opium smoking to the long list of my other vices. Well, I assure you that, like you, I was visiting the Green Pagoda in order to find someone. You found Hugo Castle. I, unfortunately, have not found the man I was after.
May I ask who you were looking for?
A man called Maynard Burley. He came to live in London several years ago. He led a checkered, colourful existence, having been an actor, a seaman, and a tobacco importer. He bought a house, married a local lass, and settled down in Islington. He was happy with his wife and a young son. Recently, he's had no set occupation, but has interests in several concerns of the city. He travels to town every morning by train, returning to Shoreditch Station by the 5:15 each night. Last Monday, Maynard Burley left the house earlier than usual. His wife, Sarah, remembers it very well.
I'm going now, Sarah.
Maynard, dear, it's long before your usual time.
Yes. There are several things I wish to do before reaching the office. I want to do some shopping. I'll bring home a set of soldiers for the boy.
Oh, Raymond will love that. He's been asking for those for weeks. Have a good day, dear.
And you. Don't work too hard in the house. I expect to be back at the usual time. Goodbye, dear.
Goodbye.
Now, shortly after her husband had left that morning, Sarah Burley received a telegram saying that a parcel of considerable value that she'd been expecting from her family in Australia had arrived at the offices of the Tower Shipping Company. So after lunch, she went to the city. She did some shopping and collected the parcel. Walking back to the station, she crossed Bell Lane, and at the corner of Julia Street, looked around hoping for a vacant cab. She waited and looked up at the opposite building. To her horror, she saw at a high barred window the face of her husband staring down at her. She couldn't believe her eyes.
Maynard! Maynard! What on earth, Maynard? In a place like that? Help someone. Please help.
She tried to enter the building. She couldn't, because, as you may have guessed, the room she wanted was above the Green Pagoda building that we've just left. Eventually, she appealed to the police, and a sergeant from Tower Hill Station accompanied her back to the building. She identified the room, and as they climbed the stairs...
I know I'm not mistaken, Sergeant. It was my husband, all right. I saw him quite clearly. He had his hands up to his face. He could have been pleading with me for help. He looked so ill, and he covered his face with his hands. He is in here. I know he is.
Oh, this must be the room.
But it's empty. There's no one here. But that was the window. Those long, dirty curtains. He must have been standing here and looking down and... Wait. What's this? It's a box. It's a box of toy soldiers. The present he was going to buy for little Raymond. What is through there?
Let's see. Another room. Then a window that looks out over the parapet and onto the river. Wait, there's blood on the windowsill. Fresh blood.
No. Look, there in the corner, the chair. Those clothes. When I saw him at the window, he was wearing a shirt but no tie, but these are his clothes. The clothes he was wearing when he left this morning. I know they are.
Leave this to me, Mrs. Burley. I'm convinced there's something really wrong here. I'll go and question other folk who may be living on this floor. You stay here with the clothes. I'll quickly get you out of this place as soon as I can. No place for a lady of breeding. What have we here? What are you doing, sleeping on the stairs?
I ain't doing no harm. Just leave me be.
You've been here quite a while. Have you seen anyone come down this way, from the rooms above?
No one at all.
Wait a minute, I know you. Mike the peddler. Beg on the streets. Pretend to sell matches, but you're a beggar, aren't you? Work a beat from here to Threadneedle Street. Have you been upstairs?
No, I swear I haven't. I don't know nothing.
No? Come on, up you get. What's this?
Huh?
Blood. Blood all over the cuffs of your shirt. Well, you've got a lot to answer for, Mike Beale. Come on, come along with me.
And only this evening I have learned from men in the Green Pagoda that Maynard Burley's overcoat has been found in the Thames. I'm afraid it's a case of murder. I feel I've failed, Watson. What am I to tell that poor woman?
It was late when we got back to Baker Street, and I went straight to bed. The lights remained on in Holmes' room, and I knew he was far from satisfied with the way things had worked out. Over breakfast the next morning, he seemed morose and disinclined to talk. We'd finished breakfast and were lighting our first pipes of the day when Mrs. Hudson bustled in.
I've come to clear away, but there's a lady waiting on the landing, a Mrs. Burley. She says it's urgent.
Well, then show her in, Mrs. Hudson, show her in. Leave the dishes. You can fetch them later.
Just as you say. It's through here, please, Mum. I'm sorry to arrive so early, Mr. Holmes, but I had to speak to you.
That's quite all right, Mrs. Burley. Please do sit down. Some coffee? Oh, I don't think you know my friend and colleague, Dr. John Watson.
How do you do, Doctor? No, I won't have any coffee, thank you.
I suppose you've heard the news. They found your husband's overcoat in the river. The police have it now. You may be required to identify it. Strange enough, the pockets were filled with odd coins. Loose change, mostly pennies. It looks very serious, I'm afraid.
You think that Maynard was attacked by that peddler named Mike, or some other thugs and his body thrown into the Thames?
I'm afraid it is more than likely. But you appear unafraid.
Mr. Holmes, Maynard is alive. I know he is. You see, I've just received a letter from him.
You have? You brought it with you?
Yes, here it is.
Now, let me see. Well, the handwriting on the envelope is not the same as the note it contains.
No, but the note is in Maynard's handwriting.
Yes. My dearest Sarah, please not despair. I am alive and will make sure all ends well. There has been a grave mistake. It may take time to correct. Please have patience, my darling Maynard.
It's Maynard's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere.
It's written in pencil on the flyleaf torn from a book. The envelope. It seems that the person who wrote it wasn't sure of the address. The name has been blotted first and the address added later. It was posted in Gravesend by a man with dirty hands, and the gum flap smeared by someone who chews tobacco. Yes, your husband gave the note for someone else to address and post. There's something else contained in this envelope, wasn't there? I can tell by the imprint of a circle of creases on the paper.
You're very observant, Mr. Holmes. Yes, there was a ring. Signet ring. I have it here. It's Maynard's.
Ah. Then we must accept the fact that this message is genuine. But if your husband is alive and well and able to write to you, why does he not return home?
I cannot answer that. He must have some unfinished business that he has to attend to.
Either that or he can't return. He's incapable of doing so. Now, let me refresh my memory. To start with, your husband did not at any time show signs of taking opium?
No, never. He hardly smoked tobacco and rarely drank spirits.
When you saw him at the upper window of the Green Pagoda, the window was open. He made some sort of gesture with his hands?
Yes, he gave a hoarse sort of cry and his hands flew up to his face. I'm sure he was signaling for help.
Although it could have been a cry of surprise, astonishment at seeing you.
It might have been, yes, but it was over so quickly. He disappeared immediately.
Ah. He is alive, and yet his overcoat has been found in the river. The pockets filled with pennies and small coins. Strange. Very strange. Well, Mrs. Burley, will you consider leaving this note with me? Take the signet ring, of course. But leave the note and future investigations in my hands. I will communicate with you later in the day with, I hope, encouraging news.
Just as you say, Mr. Holmes. But now I know that Maynard is alive, all I want is that he should be found. Please find him, Mr. Holmes. Please find my husband.
I went about my day's tasks and for a few hours forgot the case of the missing man from the Green Pagoda. When I returned in the early evening, I found Holmes pacing the room impatiently. He was fully dressed with hat and Inverness cape, an empty pipe clenched between his teeth.
Watson, good, you're back. I've been waiting for you. Do you think you could forego supper until a little later? I've work to do, and I'm not sure I wish to tackle it alone.
Yes, if you need my assistance, then you've only to ask, Holmes.
That I know, my dear fellow. Here, a small brandy to fortify you for the night's work.
Thank you. That'll be most welcome. I take it, then, that you've made some progress.
Indeed, yes, I think so. I have a hansom waiting at the corner cabby rank. I must now put to test a little experiment. I think I behaved like a blind fool, Watson. I deserve to be kicked from here to Charing Cross. I think I have the key to the whole affair. How many times have I told you that when all possible solutions are met with failure, what is left over must provide the answer? I've been as blind as a mole. It's better to learn wisdom late than never to learn it at all. Come, Watson, finish that drink and let's be on our way. Hurry, man, hurry.
Within minutes, we were in a cab and pounding our way across London. The horse buses were filled with folk on their way home. The shopkeepers were about to put up their shutters. The gas lamps glowed at every street corner, and Holmes muttered angrily at the slow progress we were making. I could tell from the direction we were taking that Holmes was playing the game by the correct rules. We were heading for Tower Bridge and the police station. Sergeant Bennett, who'd been with Mrs. Burley on the Monday's raid on the opium den, was on duty.
Evening, Mr. Holmes. What can I do for you?
I've called about Mike Beale, the beggar who was questioned regarding the disappearance of Maynard Burley. Have you held him for questioning?
He's about to be remanded on a full charge. At the moment, we know he's still in his room above the Green Pagoda. The place has been closed down. It's under surveillance night and day. No one allowed in or out.
I see. So Mike the peddler is virtually a prisoner in that place?
Oh, put it that way if you wish. Of course, there's no way we could forcibly hold him. But he knows if he as much as puts his nose out from the street, we shall grab him on some charge or other. Can't let him slip through our fingers.
No, of course not.
If he left that place, he could vanish in a couple of minutes into the dock area on a ship and out of the country in 24 hours. That's why we've got him shut up in there, pending further evidence. Once we find the body of Maynard Burley, we'll slap a murder charge across Mike Beale quicker than lightning.
Well, you may be bending the law a little, Sergeant, but I'm very grateful for it. Yes, I suspected as much. That's why I'm here. You see, I want to ask Mike the peddler a few questions. I knew I should be unable to get in to see him without you. Can you arrange to have Watson and me let into that building?
Oh, I'll do better than that, Mr. Holmes. I'll come along with you. Constable, I'm off on the Burley case. Expect me when you go off duty. Come on, Mr. Holmes. I'll have the station wagon get us there right away.
Short ride this time. Within a matter of minutes, we drew up outside the dark alley that led to the Green Pagoda. This time, all was still. There was just the music wafting in from the gin shop next door. But the opium den was deserted. It still smelt of smoke and filth. By the light of a lantern, the sergeant showed us the way through and up the stairs to the sleazy rooms above.
He's got to be in here. Can't have left. Mind you, I doubt if we'll be able to get much sense out of him. He just mutters into that filthy grey beard of his.
What was his explanation regarding the blood on his shirt cuffs?
Said he'd fallen and cut his wrist on a bit of broken glass. The funny thing is, he did have a nasty cut. Didn't go into details. He couldn't. He was too drunk to talk much. Of course, he has had time to sober up, being in here all alone. That's unless he's got a real good supply hidden away. Right, this should be where we'll find him. The second door on the right. In here.
The sergeant held the lantern high above his head as he entered the room. It was empty, but for a trestle bed and a table in the far corner. On the bed, covered by a single blanket, was the man we wanted. He was asleep, his face towards us. An uglier man I've seldom seen. His face seemed bloated, yet crustaceous, and of an unreal pallor. I'm a medical man, and not easily shocked, but I was repelled by this sight. Holmes, on the other hand, seemed totally unaffected, but whispered to me urgently.
Don't wake him. Just move close enough to hold him fast. When I tell you, seize his arms. Use all your strength. He's going to put up a devil of a struggle. Wait. Right. Right now. What the hell? Hold him up. Let me go. Now, let me get his face. Yes, I've got to show you his real face. There. Hold on. Hold on, it's coming away. No!
What the devil is that?
His whole face is coming away. It's peeled off like the bark of a tree.
Yes, and the grey hair, too. Up with that. Come on. Light the lamp on the table, Sergeant, and ask this man that question. All right, you may get up now, Mr. Maynard Burley.
What the devil is it? All right. I give in. What am I charged with now?
You really are Mr. Maynard Burley.
If I am, then clearly I cannot be responsible for my own death. So legally, I must be allowed to leave.
You may not have committed a major crime, Burley, but you've caused a grave disruption of the public peace. You've disgraced yourself. And above all, you've let your wife down most dreadfully. If you feel anything for her and your son, then now is the time to make amends.
Well, it was something I drifted into. And once in, I couldn't see a way out. You see, in my youth, I'd been on the stage, and when things became difficult, I thought I'd turn to writing. I wrote a series of articles about what it was like to be a beggar of the streets. In order to find out by first-hand knowledge, I became a beggar. I used a rubber mask, a different whining voice, and I got all the information I needed. I wrote the articles, and they were a success. Then times changed. I found I could make more money as a beggar than I could as an honest journalist. I could make over £1 a day by whining and begging. I still had a little money from my investments, but regular employment seemed to evade me. I took to begging as Mike Beale as a profession. I left our modest home in Islington each morning well-dressed for the city. I begged all day and changed back into my city clothes in the late afternoon. I rented these rooms above the Green Pagoda for changing purposes. Imagine my horror when I looked out of the window last Monday and saw my wife in the street below. I rushed into the room, threw my overcoat with the day's takings into the river. As I did so, I cut my wrist on the broken window pane. There was blood everywhere. I donned my rubber mask and hurried to the room below, pretending a drunken sleep. I assumed the identity of Mike Beale. I've had to do it ever since. I've been waiting for the chance to slip away, go back to Sarah and my young son.
Yes, you were worried about them. That's why you arranged to send your wife that note and your signet ring, posted by one of the inmates of the Green Pagoda before it was closed down. As well, Mr. Burley, it seems to me that you have a great deal upon your conscience. You obviously cannot be held for the murder of Maynard Burley, but how you'll be able to face up to your wife again is something I shall never know.
Holmes looked at the sergeant, who appeared completely baffled. The sergeant shrugged his shoulders and indicated that he didn't know what line of action to take. It was Holmes who took the initiative.
If the police manage to hush this up, Burley, well, there must be an end to this. No more begging, no more Mike Beale.
I swear by the most solemn oath that it shall be so.
Then I think you should tell your wife everything. If she is the lady I think she is, then she will find it in her heart to forgive you. I promise you that we shall be silent. The rest is up to you. Well, now, Watson, how about that supper waiting for you back at Baker Street? Shall we get back to it straight away?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage's Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.